Let me ask you a question that might sting a little. If Warren Buffett sat across from you right now, looked you straight in the eyes, and asked, "Do you know the single most important secret that separates the wealthy from everyone else?" Could you answer him? Before you say yes, it's investing or it's about saving money, stop. Because if that's what you're thinking, you've already missed it. Here's the painful truth. The reason you're not wealthy yet has nothing to do with how hard you work, how many hours you put in, or even how smart you are. It's because the richest people in the world, people like Warren Buffett, are playing a completely different game than you are. And the cruelest part? You've been taught to play the wrong game your entire life. This is not about working harder. This is not about waking up at 5 a.m. And it's definitely not about some get-rich-quick scheme. It's about understanding the one mental shift that almost no one talks about. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And it changes everything about how you think, how you earn, and how you live. If you've ever felt like you're running in circles financially, if you've ever wondered why some people seem to magnetically attract wealth while others spend their entire lives just getting by, you're about to find out the reason. But I'll warn you, once you know this, you'll realize why most people will never get rich, and why Warren Buffett has been quietly using this to build a fortune for over 80 years. So here's my promise. Stick with me until the very end of this video, because that's when I'll finally reveal the core secret, the one Buffett himself has lived by, and more importantly, exactly how you can apply it starting today. And once you know it, you'll look back at your old way of thinking about money and wonder how you ever believed it could work. Now, if you're serious about changing the trajectory of your life, do this right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what we're about to cover is not the kind of watered-down advice you get in short clips online. This is the kind of knowledge that can completely rewire the way you think about money forever. You know what's funny? When I was younger, I used to believe that becoming rich was just about stacking up money, save more than you spend, and eventually, you'll cross some invisible finish line where life suddenly becomes easy. But here's the problem. I looked around at people who had been saving for decades, and most of them were still trapped. They weren't living a life of abundance, they were living a life of careful limitation. And the first time this hit me, I was at a dinner party. Nothing fancy, just a small get-together. There was a man there who had been working at the same company for 35 years. He had a decent house, a retirement plan, and a car that was, well, functional. On paper, he was safe. But when the topic of travel came up, he said something that stopped me cold. "I'd love to see Europe before I die, but I just can't justify spending the money right now." Think about that. 3.5 decades of doing everything right. Working, saving, avoiding debt, and still unable to afford something as basic as a dream trip. That's when I realized something was deeply wrong with the way we're taught to think about money. Because the truth is, wealthy people don't operate on the save and wait model. They don't think of money as something you hide away until you're old enough to finally use it. They see it as a tool, a living, breathing engine that's either working for you or slowly rusting away. Warren Buffett once said, "If you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die." And that's not just a clever quote, it's a brutal reality check. But here's the part most people miss. It's not about finding a way to make passive income. It's about building a mindset that constantly looks for leverage. The rich are obsessed with leverage. Not just financial leverage, but time leverage, skill leverage, network leverage. They understand that the only way to escape the grind is to put something else to work in place of your raw hours. Now, if you've been taught your whole life that hard work pays off, this probably sounds uncomfortable. It might even sound unfair. But that's exactly why most people never escape the middle. They're told the game is about effort, when in reality, it's about positioning. Here's a thought experiment for you. Imagine two people. The first works 60 hours a week at a decent job, pulls in a respectable salary, and saves diligently. The second works 30 hours a week, but spends their spare time building systems, investments, partnerships, cash flowing assets that pay them whether they're working or not. Fast forward 10 years. The first person is exhausted, still saving, still hoping for retirement to finally free them. The second, their systems are paying them more than their job, and they can choose to work or not. Who's really winning? The irony is, the first person might even look down on the second in the early years, thinking they're not working hard enough. And by the time they realize who was actually playing the real game, it's too late to catch up. And this is exactly where Buffett's philosophy sneaks in. slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. Because the richest people in the world aren't sprinting on the treadmill of effort. They're building the treadmill itself and letting it run without them. So the first step in understanding Buffett's biggest secret isn't about stocks or business or even finance. It's about breaking the mental link between time and money. As long as you believe that the only way to get more money is to give more time, you will always be capped. But the moment you start asking yourself, how can I make money without being there? You open a door that can never be closed. And I'll tell you something. The first time you earn money in your sleep, even if it's just a small amount, you'll never think about money the same way again. Now, keep watching, because in the next part, we're going to break down the exact mindset shifts Warren Buffett made early in his life that allowed him to start building wealth decades before most people even get serious about saving. And trust me, this is where the gap between average and extraordinary gets brutally clear. When Warren Buffett was a teenager, he did something that most people overlook because it sounds so ordinary. He picked up a book. Not just any book. The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. Now, you might think, okay, he read a book about investing. Big deal. But here's the thing. Buffett didn't just read it. He absorbed it. He obsessed over it. He started applying its ideas before he even had much money to invest. That's the first real separation point between the wealthy and everyone else. They start thinking like investors long before they have big money to work with. Most people wait until they've saved enough before they start. But by then, they've already wasted years, sometimes decades, letting opportunities pass them by. Buffett once said, "The most important investment you can make is in yourself." And when you hear that, it sounds like a motivational poster, right? But let's unpack it, because he wasn't talking about spa days and journaling. He meant upgrading your mind to see value where others see nothing. I'll give you an example. When I first started studying wealthy people, I noticed they had this almost supernatural ability to connect dots. They'd see a boring, everyday thing, a parking lot, a rundown building, a piece of software, and instantly imagine how it could produce money. The rest of us, we see it, shrug, and move on. Why? Because our brains have been trained to see jobs, not opportunities. This is why Buffett started so young. He didn't need to be a millionaire to think like one. He trained himself to spot value. He started buying pinball machines, placing them in barbershops, and collecting quarters. Not because it would make him rich, but because it rewired his brain to see income streams instead of price tags. Now, here's where this gets uncomfortable. If you're listening to this right now and you've been waiting for the right time to start building wealth, I can promise you, you're already late. The wealthy start building skills and vision before they have resources. Everyone else waits for resources before they build skills and vision. That's the trap. And this is the part that Buffett understood so well. Compounding doesn't just apply to money. It applies to knowledge. Every skill, every piece of insight you gain early starts compounding in value over time. The longer you wait to start, the more exponential growth you give up. Let me put it this way. Imagine you have a snowball. You can roll it down a hill for 40 years, and by the end, you've got something massive. Or you can wait until you're 50 to start rolling it, and by the time it's big enough to matter, the hill is almost over. That's what most people do with wealth building. So here's the mindset shift. Stop thinking you need more money before you can act. Start thinking, what can I do today with what I already have? It could be reading a book that changes how you see investments. It could be starting a side project, testing a small business idea, or learning a skill that pays you forever. Because here's the punchline. If you're not training your brain to think like an investor right now, it won't magically happen later when you finally have money. And that's the uncomfortable truth. Wealth doesn't start in your bank account. It starts in your head. By the time the average person realizes this, they're decades behind the people who figured it out early, like Buffett. So in the next part, I'm going to walk you through one of the most counterintuitive habits Buffett built early in his career. A habit that goes against what 99% of people are taught about money. But that quietly set him up to become one of the richest men alive. And when you hear it, you'll probably think, that can't possibly be right. But it is. I'm going to say something that might sound completely wrong at first. Warren Buffett doesn't actually care about making money. I know. That sounds insane. The man's worth over $100 billion, and I'm telling you he's not obsessed with making money. But here's the twist. Buffett is obsessed with keeping money. And that, my friend, is a completely different game. Most people treat money like it's a prize you grab as fast as possible. They chase high salaries, big bonuses, fast returns. And then, like sand through their fingers, it slips away. Buffett once said, "The first rule of investment is don't lose. The second rule is don't forget the first rule." That's it. Notice he doesn't say double your money or make it big. He's talking about protection first. Here's why this is such a game changer. Most people focus on earning rate, how quickly they can make more. Buffett focuses on loss avoidance, how to make sure what he already has stays and grows. Because compounding only works if the principle is intact. One big loss can wipe out years of progress. Let me give you a brutal example. Imagine you have $100,000. You lose 50% of it. Now you've got $50,000. To get back to $100,000, you don't just need another 50% gain. You need a 100% gain. That's the math most people ignore. Losses are exponentially more expensive than they look. And here's where Buffett's mindset goes against the grain. While others rush into the next big thing chasing speed, he waits patiently, sometimes for years. He studies, he researches, he ignores the hype, and when he finally moves, he does it with almost absurd confidence because he's already eliminated most of the risk. This is why his portfolio looks boring to the average person. Coke, Apple, American Express. Not the hottest, trendiest names, but he's not chasing excitement. He's building an uncheckable foundation. And there's a hidden lesson here that nobody talks about. Wealth isn't about hitting home runs every time. It's about avoiding the strikeouts that ruin your season. Let me ask you this. How many times in your life have you made a quick financial move, only to regret it later? Maybe it was buying into a sure-thing stock tip. Maybe it was sinking money into a business idea you didn't fully understand. Now imagine if every single one of those decisions had been filtered through a Buffett-style risk filter. Do I actually understand this? Could I explain it to a 10-year-old? Am I okay owning this forever? Most of those bad moves would have never happened. And here's the funny part. Avoiding mistakes might sound boring, but in the long run, it's what makes you rich. Because the game isn't about how fast you can climb. It's about making sure you never fall so hard you can't get back up. So the third mental shift here is simple. Protect first, grow second. When you flip that order in your mind, you start making decisions like the rich, and your wealth, however small it starts, becomes almost untouchable over time. Now, in the next part, I'm going to tell you about something Buffett does that's even stranger. It's not about money. It's not about investments. And yet, it's one of the main reasons he's been able to stay sharp and competitive well into his 90s. This one, almost nobody gets it right. Warren Buffett spends about 80% of his day reading, not trading, not attending flashy meetings, not pacing around some Wall Street office shouting into a phone, just sitting quietly, reading. Now, if you picture the typical rich guy routine, this probably isn't it. You imagine private jets, boardrooms, maybe a yacht somewhere in the Mediterranean. But Buffett, he's in his office in Omaha, not New York, not Silicon Valley, flipping pages. And here's the kicker. He's not just reading about investments. He's devouring biographies, company reports, history books, even articles about industries he has no intention of entering. Why? Because Buffett knows something most people don't. Your brain is your greatest compounding asset. Think about it. Money compounds when you invest it. Skills compound when you practice them. But knowledge compounds forever. And it compounds across everything. Every book Buffett reads, every report he studies, every conversation he has with smart people. It's like adding another layer of armor to his decision-making. It's not obvious in the moment, but over decades, it's unstoppable. Most people stop actively learning the sec and they leave school. They think, I've got my degree, I've got my job, now I just work. And that's the moment their mental edge starts to dull. Buffett does the opposite. He wakes up every day knowing that the most valuable thing he can do for his wealth is to expand his mental toolkit. Because here's the truth. Opportunities don't announce themselves. They don't wave a flag and say, invest here. You need the ability to recognize them when they quietly pass by. And recognition comes from deep, why, and constant learning. Let me give you an example. Back in the 1960s, Buffett came across a struggling textile company called Berkshire Hathaway. It wasn't in a hot industry. In fact, textiles were dying in the US. But Buffett recognized something most investors missed: The company had cash flow and assets that could be repurposed. He didn't buy it because he wanted to run a textile business. He bought it because his knowledge of business structures told him it could become an investment vehicle. That single decision, born from reading and connecting dots, eventually became the foundation for all his future investments. So here's your takeaway. The wealthiest people don't just outwork you in hours. They outlearn you in knowledge advantage. And knowledge advantage is invisible until it suddenly turns into an opportunity that others overlook. If you're not feeding your brain every day, not with random social media no's, but with strategic, high-quality information, you're operating with a dull blade in a game where sharpness is everything. And here's the sneaky part. This habit of constant learning not only makes Buffett smarter, it makes him calmer. When you've seen patterns across industries, across decades, you stop reacting to every little market move. You become patient. And patience is one of the deadliest competitive advantages in the wealth game. So the fourth shift here is this. Become a voracious learner. Treat your brain like a portfolio that needs constant reinvestment, because one insight, just one, can change the entire trajectory of your wealth. In the next part, I'm going to tell you about a discipline Buffett practices that has nothing to do with reading, investing, or business meetings. And yet, it's the reason his decision-making has stayed razor-sharp for more than half a century. It's a discipline almost everyone fails at, and it costs them millions without them ever realizing it. Warren Buffett has a secret weapon that almost nobody talks about. It's not a stock-picking formula. It's not some insider network, and it's definitely not luck. It's saying no. Buffett is ruthless with his time and attention, not in an arrogant way, but in a deeply calculated, protective way. He once said, "The difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything." Almost everything. See? Most people treat their calendar like a bucket to be filled. Invitations, meetings, social events, quick calls, favors. They pile it all in. And then they wonder why they're exhausted, scattered, and never able to go deep on anything. Buffett flips it. His schedule is almost empty by design. In fact, Bill Gates once said that when he first saw Buffett's calendar, he was shocked. There were entire days with nothing on them. Gates, who at the time ran Microsoft at full speed, couldn't believe it. And yet, this is exactly why Buffett can think clearly. Because here's the truth. Wealth creation is less about doing more and more about protecting the space to think. Big ideas don't come when you're sprinting from one meeting to the next. They come in the quiet moments when your mind can wander, connect dots, and see angles others miss. And this no discipline doesn't just apply to time. It applies to opportunities, too. Buffett famously says, "The stock market is a no-called-strike game." You don't have to swing at everything. In baseball, if you let 3 pitches go by without swinging, you're out. In investing, you can watch 10,000 pitches and only swing at the one that's perfect for you. Most people swing at everything. They're so afraid of missing out that they jump at half-baked ideas, bad deals, and hype-driven investments. Buffett, he watches, he waits, he says no. 99 times out of 100. This is where the emotional pain kicks in for most people. Saying no feels like you're rejecting possibility. But here's the paradox. Every no you give to a bad or average opportunity is actually a yes to the right one when it finally appears. And this applies to your personal life, too. Think about it. How many projects, commitments, or even relationships are quietly draining your time and mental energy right now? What would happen if you ruthlessly cut them out? Most people don't realize that wealth isn't just about adding. It's about subtracting, cutting away the no's so the signal is crystal clear. So the fifth mindset shift is this. Make no your default. Guard your time like it's your most valuable asset, because it is. Protect your mental bandwidth like a hawk, and when the right pitch finally comes, you'll be ready to swing with full focus and full force. In the next part, we're going to dive into a Buffett philosophy that's almost invisible when you look at him now, but it's the reason he's never burned out, never lost his edge, and never stopped compounding his success for over 70 years. It's a principle that works for health, wealth, and relationships, and if you ignore it, the cost is irreversible. There's a reason Warren Buffett has been at the top of his game for over 7 decades, without burning out, without selling out, and without losing the razor edge of his mind. It's not just his investing skill. It's not even just his discipline with money and time. It's something deeper, something that quietly fuels everything else. He plays the long game in everything. And I don't mean long-term investing in the generic sense you've probably heard 1,000 times. I mean his entire life is designed around compounding. Not just wealth, but relationships, reputation, trust, and energy. Here's the part most people miss. You can't play the long game if your life is set up to constantly chase short-term wins. Most people are addicted to immediacy. Quick profits. Quick dopamine hits. Quick recognition. They measure life in days and weeks, while Buffett measures it in decades. This changes everything. For example, in the financial world, people panic during market crash. They sell low because they're terrified. Buffett, he calls them sales. While everyone else sees chaos, he sees the seeds of his future fortune. Why? Because he's not looking at this week or even this year. He's looking at the 10, 20, 30-year picture. But here's the deeper part. This long-term lens also applies to his relationships. Buffett is legendary for his loyalty. He's had the same business partner, Charlie Munger, for over 60 years. Same assistant for decades. Same circle of friends. He doesn't jump from connection to connection like most people chasing the next big contact. He invests in people the way he invests in businesses, with patience, trust, and a horizon so long that others can't compete. Why does that matter? Because trust is the ultimate interest-bearing asset. Every year you keep it intact, it pays you in opportunities you could never buy with money. Now, let's talk about health, because it's a part of the equation no one likes to admit. Buffett famously jokes about drinking Coca-Cola every day, but behind the humor is a reality. He keeps a pace he can sustain forever. He's not sprinting to exhaustion, he's walking at a pace that lets him go on and on. Most entrepreneurs burn bright and fast, and then burn out. Buffett's secret is that he's never trying to win the day at the expense of the decade. And that discipline is brutally hard in a world that constantly pressures you to deliver right now. And this is where you, watching this, might need to ask yourself a tough question. Are you building a life you can keep compounding for the next 30 years, or are you running a race that will destroy you in 3? Because here's the truth nobody tells you. Wealth without endurance is a ticking time bomb. I've met people who made millions quickly and lost it all even faster. Not because they weren't smart, but because they were playing a short game in a long game world. Buffett has trained himself to resist the short game at every level. In money, he refuses to chase hot investments. In business, he ignores fads and focuses on fundamentals. In life, he invests in people and habits that will still matter in 30 years. And here's the paradox. By committing to the long game, he actually wins more in the short term than most people who chase it. Because every decision he makes is built on a foundation that's already rock solid. So if you want the closest thing to Buffett's immortality in business, it's this. Design your life to be sustainable and compounding. Cut the frantic sprinting. Build for the marathon. Be patient enough to wait for the right pitch, and strong enough to still be standing when it comes. In the final part, I'm going to reveal the biggest secret Buffett knows. The one thing that ties all of this together. Without it, none of the other strategies work. With it, you can quietly outpace 99% of people without breaking a sweat. And here's the twist. It's not what you think. Here it is. The biggest secret Warren Buffett knows. The one most people will never understand until it's too late. It's not a hack. It's not even a strategy in the way you're used to hearing that word. It's this. The ultimate wealth multiplier is your ability to stay rational when everyone else is losing their mind. Sounds simple, right? It's not. In fact, it's the rarest skill in the world. Think about every boom and bust you've seen. In markets, in business, even in personal life, the pattern is always the same. When things go up, greed takes over. People stop thinking. They follow the herd. They overextend. And when things go down, fear takes over. Panic selling, bad decisions, missed opportunities. Buffett, he's like a surgeon in the middle of chaos, calm, measured, unmoved by the noise. He doesn't let excitement push him into stupid risks, and he doesn't let fear scare him out of brilliant opportunities. He calls it emotional stability. I call it the real billionaire superpower. Here's why this is so powerful. Your biggest financial wins won't come from finding the perfect investment. They'll come from avoiding the catastrophic mistakes that wipe everyone else out. And avoiding those mistakes isn't about IQ. It's about keeping your head straight when the world around you is screaming. Remember 2008? The global financial crisis. People were selling stocks like they were on fire. Buffett was buying. He invested billions into companies everyone else thought were doomed. Why? Because he could see past the panic into the fundamentals. He wasn't guessing. He wasn't gambling. He was simply rational when others weren't. And here's the kicker. This doesn't just apply to money. If you can stay rational when people around you are spiraling, in business negotiations, in relationships, in everyday decisions, you immediately gain an unfair advantage. Because while they're reacting emotionally, you're acting strategically. But how do you build this ability? Buffett has a few principles that keep him anchored. 1. Never make decisions in a hurry. If you're under pressure, that's when mistakes happen. He waits. He gathers information. He acts only when the math and the logic line up. 2. Ignore the crowd. The crowd is almost always wrong at the extremes, at the height of greed and at the depths of fear. 3. Know your circle of competence. He only invests in what he truly understands, so when chaos hits, he knows whether his investments are still solid or not. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You can have all the intelligence, resources, and opportunities in the world. But if you lose control of your emotions in critical moments, you will lose, period. Buffett once said, if you can't control your emotions, you can't control your money. That's the core of it. Emotional control is the foundation of every other principle we've talked about. It's what allows patience, discipline, long-term thinking, and compounding to actually work. So the secret? Learn to be the calmest person in the room. The one who sees clearly when others can't. The one who acts deliberately and others are rushing. Do that, and over time, the gap between you and the rest of the world will become so wide it's almost unfair. Now, you've heard the strategies. You've heard the mindset shifts, but none of it matters if you close this video and go back to chasing quick wins, reacting to headlines, and letting the noise run your life. So if you're serious about building real wealth, the kind that lasts, commit to this. Protect your mind first, because once you master that, everything else we've talked about becomes inevitable. If you found this valuable, hit that like button. Subscribe for more deep dives like this. And remember, the biggest secret isn't knowing what Buffett knows. It's doing what Buffett does. So if you're serious about building real wealth, the kind that lasts, commit to this. Protect your mind first, because once you master that, everything else we've talked about becomes inevitable. And that's it. That's the whole game. If you get it, you'll never look at money or life the same way again. Now stop wasting time here. Go watch my other videos. That's where you'll find the next piece you need.